Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on episode 158, I was very lucky to have Jamie Brownlee on the podcast. He is a director at Greentarget. Basically, we talked about a number of different things about the financial sector, what changes it's gone through over the last 15 months, how like PR might be affecting the sector going forward, what companies might be looking to do. It was a very interesting conversation. I've got to say, joy to have him on. I felt like I learned a lot. I think you will too. So please sit back, enjoy the show, and have a great day. Please don't forget, subscribe to the podcast, and be awesome. Peace. Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on episode 158, I am very privileged to have Jamie Brownlee. He is a director at Greentarget. You know what? Normally I have to, when I say this, there are a number of things I have to say. Director, writer, podcaster, like Grand Emperor. Well, I haven't had to call them so Grand Emperor. Yeah. But how are you today, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. And thank you very much for having me on. It's a real pleasure.
The pleasure's all mine. The pleasure's all mine. Yeah. You are a director at Greentarget. What is Greentarget precisely?
So we are a financial services PR firm. So we deal with a lot of kind of B2B communications and PR issues for clients, but very much in a kind of long, in a sort of short story told, long story short told short. Very much we enhance and protect the brands. Public perception of the brands that we represent, working with the media, social media, podcasts, any other sort of forums or mediums that we can find that we think are suitable for clients to promote them, basically.
Right. Like with this sort of, it must have been, how can I put it? It must have been a tricky sort of 15 months for you with regards to how everything's been.
You know what? It's funny. I think financial services in general has actually had if you look across the board, actually financial services has done pretty darn well in the last 15 to 18 months. It really has. We, in what I do and my firm, we already had a 2 or 3 day working from home policy. Okay. So actually the transition once we were all told you can't go back into the office very abruptly was actually for us very easy. And we kind of hit the ground running. We have to say at the time, like everyone in the world, we were like a bit sort of obviously shocked, but also not quite sure what the permutations would have. I think we were confident in ourselves, but we weren't necessarily confident in what was going to happen around us. So we didn't really know what to expect. But I think the way that we transitioned and the way that we have worked from home and actually just shown everybody that a lot of people can work from home and actually they can work very well from home. Yeah, of course you want to collaborate with your peers and your colleagues. I mean, it's great to be in a room and to chat, but actually sometimes, actually getting your head down is actually I don't really mind working from home once in a while because I can really put my head down. I can get on top of things quite quickly. So I think we've realized there's definitely a time and a place for each. So going forward, we're, for example, going to have a very much a flexible working policy going forward. Obviously, we'd like people in the office once or twice a week, and particularly once a month for a big, a big get together, whether it be down the pub or for lunch. I think that's really important to make sure that we meet. But no, I have to say in general, and we're actually having one of our, what are we in July now? We're having one of our best years so far that we've ever had. And I think that's just a number of things. A little bit of luck in the fact that when we timed the whole kind of working policy that we had in place, we timed it just right. We started it in March 2019. So by the time it came around, actually we were ready to go. And that was luck, but also I think it was quite a good call from us because we kind of appreciated what was required, and actually it was responding to what a lot of, for example, the younger staff that we were employing were asking. They were asking for that level of freedom and that level of flexibility with working. So I think we were able to do that, and we did that early, and that has certainly helped us massively.
Right. That is unusual for a company to like take on that sort of degree of flexibility, especially in the sort of financial services. If it was tech, I'll be like, yeah, but yeah, financial services. What's like put you guys in that sort of, how can I say, forward-thinking mindset?
I think honestly, it's a case of we are quite a young company in the sense of the people that we have are young. We're very much a multicultural society, company. We have, I think it's half of the people in our company at the moment, their first language is not English. So we embrace all different cultures, all different languages. And that, I think, in itself has really helped us because it's allowed us to have thinking that's more varied than in some companies. We're also small. We're a boutique. We know we're a specialist small firm, so we're able to be quite nimble and quite fast in decision making. You know, we literally sat down, thought, well, why don't we trial a couple of days a week where we allow people to work from home and see how it goes. If we find that people are slacking or that it's not working, we'll bin it. And it worked brilliantly, and we kept it. And actually, I think that's like a lot of our decision making. We're able to do it quite quickly. And that certainly helps. But you're right. I mean, financial services, it's interesting in financial services at the moment because what you have is you have a lot of big firms, right, in financial services that are clearly realizing that their staff do want that level of flexibility. And then on the complete reverse of that, you're having big names in business, whether it be on Twitter or LinkedIn or on TV, etc., coming out with big bold statements saying, I want all my staff back at their desks. And I think that you're seeing a big variance, and it's not necessarily in sizes of companies.
No, I think it comes down to sort of more of a sort of mental attitude to it all, because like, look, with regards to like the big bad pandemic, which we still are dealing with, look, July the 19th is coming, Freedom Day, like, as I call it. But like the whole thing is there's been everything about the pandemic has shifted everything forward by, I would say, about 5 or 10 years.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but like, yeah. But with regards to working from home, everything like this, like conferences, video conferencing, Zoom is like a common word for now the video service.
I totally agree, and I think you're right. It was inevitable this was going to happen because I think people are really starting to take well-being, staff well-being, general well-being really seriously, and they're saying, you know, actually the well-being of our staff, if we allow that level of flexibility where they can spend more time with their family, where they can spend more time at home with their loved ones, and actually have that work-life balance, that means that they can, for example, go away on a weekend and come and work from home on the Monday, so they don't have to, you know, feel that abruptness of having to rush back on a Sunday and getting up. You know, it just allows that level of flexibility, and I think it was definitely coming. You could feel it. You could feel that there was that demand for it. And I think that was probably from a younger generation coming through, but also the existing generations. But I think this has definitely absolutely accelerated this. And I think this period has accelerated a lot of things, whether it be in terms of diversity, whether it be in case, you know, say work-life balance, whether it be in case of, you know, just general understanding that actually people aren't just commodities. We actually, you know, staff well-being and caring for people's mental health, and making sure you're bringing people through is really important. And I think I totally agree. I think we're 5-10 years ahead of where we were supposed to be if COVID wasn't around. And I think that's only a good thing.
Yeah, and like this is the thing I would say with regards to like tech from like the standpoint of working from home and like sort of well-being, which was before COVID hit. That's demonetized it on YouTube. Well, not even monetized, so don't worry about that. But before COVID hit, there was like a real sort of drive like in health and well-being in the actual office itself. One of the things which like kind of like I've been looking at a number of different industries and how they kind of reacting to the big bang pandemic previously is financial services was kind of on a sort of turn with like the rise of fintech and everything like that. But like now, with regards to sort of invoice finance, sort of went like, well, it's technically gone goodbye, and civils has now taken its place. How do you like think the landscape will be going sort of forward in like?
I mean, yeah. Yeah, I think anything with tech, I think tech again is one of those sectors that has, because people haven't had the ability to do face-to-face work in the last, again, tech has been accelerated forward. And I think fintech in particular is enormous. I think the sector is going to grow and grow and grow, and that's from both B2B and B2C. I really think that more and more companies are going to become, again, I think they've been pushed, accelerated forward and pushed forward, and I think that is only going to I think create more niches in the market, more interesting ways of doing things, and then sadly it means that perhaps more firms that have had a little bit more of a traditional or an antiquated way of working will sadly cease to exist. I think you'll just have a rush to more nimble, great use of tech, really interesting firms that have a different way of thinking. I think that has accelerated it. This whole period has accelerated that so much. And I think, for example, I do a lot of work in wealth management, and wealth management, for example, you're seeing a massive rush to I guess this is obviously push from a younger generation coming through who are interested in trading and investing, but a lot of firms that are working out how they can get into that play. So how do they provide a platform for people that's interesting and that's easy to use? How do they get people through? Because the wealth management industry, for example, is still quite traditional in the way it works. And I think a lot of people are going to want to trade, get involved with this, get involved in investing. And I think this has been a period of self-reflection as well. People have gone, well, okay, so I have a mortgage, I have I have this amount of money, I have investments there. I think it's made people look at themselves and think, right, well, what's my future? How do I want to invest with my future? So I think, again, something like the wealth management industry needs to take advantage of this because it's a great opportunity. So really interesting and fast and high quality tech is certainly going to be in high demand, I think.
Right. Yes. Something which I don't think is like high quality tech, but it's around and it's pervasive. Like I would say it's been like, how can I say, the bane of the markets over the last like few months. You're aware of an app called Robinhood?
Yes, of course. Very well.
Yes.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
you understand where I'm coming from with that.
And you know what, that in itself, to my point about why the wealth management and why you have this big rush to kind of fintech that's attractive to retail, to retailers, is partly because of Robinhood and their involvement obviously with GameStop, which has created this buzz about investing and trading and wanting to invest and wanting to make money yourself and have a bit of control. And I'm not necessarily sure. I think it's a new phrase, but it's definitely not a new phrase. But democratizing investment, so democratizing the opportunities for people to invest their money. And Robinhood, for example, obviously one of those that was involved in that process. And there will be so many more Robinhoods coming to the fore, and a lot of the traditional trading platforms and investment platforms and wealth management platforms are having to adapt, and they're having to either buy the tech, get it white labeled, however they can do it, but they're having to respond to that because I think a lot of people underestimate how big a moment that whole GameStop saga was. I think that was such a big moment, and actually what it did is it showed how powerful and how able the younger, the millennial generation coming through are, and the ability to use tech to assemble and to make change. And oh my God, they made change, and they certainly they challenged the so-called big boys and hedge funds, and I think that's been a really important moment in investing and trading.
Yeah, no, because this is the whole thing. Like, okay, what's it? Why the guys who are on Reddit who like put this through? What they basically did, like, it was like they screwed over Gordon Gecko in Wall Street because, like, on the last big trade, it was like, yeah, you had it like the information went out to like the smaller players who would never sort of get that information beforehand.
Yeah.
And because they're out of the loop, but like down to like a few smart people like that, hey, wait a second, here's an opportunity. They did over Golden Gecko, and it was like, yeah, like billions were lost for hedge funds, they would say, but I would say like millions were made by quite a number of people.
And I think I hope that an event like that though doesn't make it doesn't. So I hope the focus isn't on necessarily on that idea of being almost kind of that revenge factor, because I think that market manipulation is obviously, it's a really dangerous game, and it's not something that people want to promote. It's not something that we want to glorify in any way.
No.
But I think what that event did, and I hope what it does going forward, is it shook up the industry and said, there's some new people coming, and you've got to get yourself ready. There's a whole new generation of people that are more tech savvy than you are more able to assemble people together and collaboratively come together and make change quickly. This isn't just in tech. We're talking in a niche area here. This is in general. You look at all the big movements that we've seen in the last few years that have been led from a younger generation, and the speed at which it's happened, and the power of it is astonishing. And that is a number of factors. It's ability to assemble, it's the tech, it's the news media, you know what I mean? It's people wanting to make change and not being afraid of it. And I think that's what it did. And it certainly made people take up and take note, I think.
Yeah, the only reason why I bring it up in tech, like, because that was the thing where I saw such a great leverage point put on the actual market itself, because overall it had a huge effect on everyone. Look, like you had Robinhood, which shut down like a couple of times during sort of key moments, and like had technical issues at key moments. But now there it like when you said don't want it to be a revengification of a situation, I don't think it's going to be a revengification. I think it's a case of there are a number of naive investors with this sort of new millennial like crowd coming in, and even say Gen Xers as well, which have seen like, and I've got to say, like, I'm not a money guy, but from what I've seen with everything going on with like, fintech, what's going on with Bitcoin, and basically the whole, like, the way capital is so cheap at this present time, I think this is, there hasn't been anything quite like this ever. Even if you try to look back at the .com boom, there hasn't been anything like this ever. And I think that's where people are like thinking, oh, I can get rich quick. It's a case of I feel like I'm going, right, if you go in with that attitude, you're going to get gamed quite hard.
Exactly right. I totally agree, and I think education is so important as well. I think you need people that are going to get involved in this, people that are wanting to learn more, will benefit. I do think that, but particularly, again, if I take certain, movements like the GameStop movement, that was based on education though as well. Okay, there was a little bit of sensationalism about the fact that it was GameStop, and it was etc. And a lot of people, big names who are influencers, were getting involved. But I think a lot of it was also based on information and education on what could happen by doing this. And I totally agree. I think education is so important. The difference, I think, now as well is in the past, and this is something that financial services in general got a lot of heat for, and at times rightly so, is that they held the key to the information, and they held the key to that information, so that actually it was a bubble of people that understood the way that certain instruments and the way that markets worked. So essentially, you are blocking out an entire, not just generations, but the large majority of the global population don't understand it, and why should they? It's at times highly complex. And I think now what's happened is that because there's the ability to permeate information so fast, to educate people so much quicker, that what you're happening is you're going to have these challenges to the big boys and to the old guard, because the old guard won't be able to hold off. It won't be able to keep this bubble. And I think you're going to have a lot of younger people and a lot of people that perhaps wouldn't have had access to that kind of information being involved, being really interested, involved. And I think that's only a good thing.
I think rather than say be sort of like a hedge fund, like typically it's going to be more sort of like would guerrilla organizations which form and disband rather quickly. So it's like, yes, there's this going on. We need to gather people, do this. And I think it's going to come down to maybe a few charismatic leaders within this sort of group to sort of like push things up. The reason why I say a few charismatic leaders with regards to, say, Dogecoin. Now, there's one certain tech entrepreneur who, like, let's just say, look, it could be perceived as market manipulation, but like, you know what I mean? I don't know what your thoughts are.
Obviously, it's a really difficult one, that, because the ability for him to send a tweet and for and again, you take Elon, but then also you've got, I look at other influencers across the board. You look at Kardashians, just a single tweet and what that can do and what that can wipe off or add to a stock or add to a sector is astonishing. It is astonishing. And again, it goes back to that point of the power of tech and social media. The concern sometimes is that they are being, because they're so strong on social media, they're being seen as leaders of the information and of educating people, and people follow because that's what they said, because they've seen the number of followers. They haven't actually looked behind the scenes, and do these people actually know exactly do they understand what they're doing? Are they behind that brand for ulterior motives? So I think when accessing information, and I think, and again, social media platforms need to do this. And you go back to this. I'm not for one second saying that fake news and all this, but I think it is very important that we do legitimize where the education information comes from, particularly when it comes to things like financial services, where people could lose lots and lots of money. And I think the sector's done a lot in the last decade. In the last 13 years since the financial crisis, they've done a lot to educate people and to put risk warnings in, and to look at that as a real danger. Or it was a real danger, particularly for retail investors. But I think more and more needs to be done to explain to them, particularly if we're going to have this swathe of new younger people coming through who want to be involved in financial services. Understand that, okay, just be sure where you're getting your information. Make sure it's credible where you're getting information from, and do your research. It's really important. So I think the industry as a whole needs to do more when it comes to that, I think.
And like, this is the thing, how do you think that push is going to come from, like, the industry itself? Is there been sort of any clear markers out there or not?
Well, it's really interesting. So one of the I work with a range of big kind of blue chip firms that are seen as perhaps the traditional old guard, and then I've got quite a few who are perhaps seen as trying to shake things up a bit, and perhaps on the smaller side. And it's interesting to see the difference. And I think what I'm certainly seeing is the traditional firms in financial services are understanding actually if they can simplify their language as much as possible, and explain and actually highlight where the risks are, or highlight the challenges, or highlight why actually, say, a product or a sector or a class of investment is of interest, but why it might not be of interest to certain people. The more they can do that, and the more that they can educate, it's much better in the long run, much better in the long run. I think the amount of financial services who still do it, frankly, who alienate an entire audience because they try and overcomplicate, or they don't overcomplicate, they just don't simplify it, frankly. They think that they're talking to somebody who works in that sector, but actually they don't. They're keeping it simple as possible. And I think that's where a lot of these investment platforms have done really, really well. Of just taking it scale back and just completely simplifying it, and providing a level of education to the type of things that they're offering that is understandable by all, and catering to a bigger audience. And I think that is the most important thing. It's just simplifying it often.
No, I hear you about simplifying it, but one of the dangers about simplifying it, in my opinion, it's when they sort of turn it into sort of a game more so than a sort of proper investment tool. Even it is a game, they gamify it, but it's still an investment tool, but they don't actually highlight the sort of dangers behind it.
And I think that there comes the problem, because you're trying to attract a younger audience who are interested, say, in social media, in that meme culture, in that quite often quite fun and and yeah, meme-like environment. And actually, you're right. They're almost. It could seem that it's actually just fake money, and this is just a bit of a game. Now, obviously, a lot of these platforms do offer a demo account, but never should they ever make it so that it's not understood that this is your capital is always at risk. And I think that still needs to meet. I think they're pretty good at it in general, but you're right. There's a very big, there's a swathe obviously to try and simplify it and make it more cool and young. Yeah. But actually, you got to be careful. I totally agree.
Yeah, no, but like this is the thing, when those firms offer those demo accounts, like the whole thing is, and like the whole thing is, there is a sort of separation from, because it's not real, the demo account, you can be a little bit more bold and like daring. But when it comes real,
and it gets you this false sense of security. You think, oh well, I've made 10%, but yeah, you're given 100 grand. Like you don't have 100 grand, so it's very, very different. Yeah, I totally agree, and it's understanding that it's money is money, and it's demo is very different to real. It certainly is.
It's like, oh my Lord, nah. Because like when people talk about like leverage and like leveraging their accounts and stuff like this, I hear that too much. And every time I think of leverage, people over leveraging themselves on a high scale, I begin to think about a certain big crash which happened in the early 1900s. So it's like,
and leverage is a very dangerous thing. And I think the industry as a whole, I work with a few companies who have obviously taken ESMA on board, which is the regulatory body, to cap leverage at a certain level. And I couldn't agree more with that. I think if you have a policy where leverage is just all over the place, and a lot of it is led from, I have to say, outside of the UK jurisdiction. So it's a lot of countries that perhaps don't have as stringent jurisdictions as we do. And that is quite dangerous, because I think you particularly with the way that you can set up a firm to a UK audience, but not actually have it headquartered here. So you're able to access that leverage, which is a little bit out of control. And that can be very, very dangerous. And that I think is what, and that behavior is slightly what has caused some people to still have those views of say trading being a bit like betting. And I think that can be quite dangerous, because it's not all like that. And there's some very, very legitimate and good quality firms who certainly don't want you to. Let's not forget, they don't want you to lose money. A lot of these trading firms do not want you to lose money, because if you lose money, you're not a customer. Yes. You're not a client. They want you to join them, to learn and to join them on a journey where ultimately they're able to sell you more products, more vehicles, but they do not want you to lose money, because you lose money, you're not a client and you're not spending any more money. So that's, again, something I think some people don't understand is it's not their intentions for you to lose money. They're not betting firms. That's the big difference.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of confusion between trading and investing. I think from like many a person, because like, yes, if you're doing the whole day trading and like on a like day-to-day basis, it is quite close to gambling in many respects. But when you're doing investing, you're talking about, okay, you buy it and you try to forget it as much as possible. And like,
you're absolutely right. And I think day trading, for example, there's obviously there are some similarities to betting, but there's a huge amount of information. If there's a lot of background studying, and a lot of education, a lot of people that will be, they're working their absolute tails off to understand the markets, to react, and learning a craft and learning skills in how markets move dependent on certain actions and certain economic data, certain things, and even little words that are said. The minutiae of the detail that these very good day traders go into is just, it's incredible. Actually, it's almost, I wish there was a program years ago called Traders on BBC Two, and I absolutely loved it. And I just wish they would do more of these type of. You may have seen it. I just wish they did more of them, because they looked at sort of 5 different people, and completely different background. One guy, I think, was a multimillionaire. One lady had 4 kids, lived on a farm. Never have thought she'd be a trader, and she was and just to understand the way it works and how actually some people are just brilliant at it, and you might not think they're brilliant at it, but just to uncover that a bit more would be really interesting, I think. But I think no, and investing is you're right. Investing is different in that a lot of it is done obviously by you might have an IFA, you might have a financial planner. You know, you'll often offload that and outsource that to somebody else. And you're right, you'll put your money in and you'll try and forget about it, and you'll hope that it grows nicely. And you know, and that's, I mean, that's what, you know, IFAs and financial planners always tell me, that they only have conversations when their money's going down. They don't need to talk to them when their money's going up. So, and obviously that's not what they want to do. So when you know, if the portfolio is growing nicely, people they're very happy to forget about it and hope that when it comes when they come down to retire, then they have a nice little pot there that they can use to enjoy retirement. Problem is now, obviously, is that people aren't dying at 70, 75. They're dying much later. So again, that's shift. You know, when it comes to investment terms, that's a huge shift for people, because, you know, and the people that were advising advising somebody are now, you know, I think the average age of an IFA is about 55 roughly. So they're the same people that were growing up with that philosophy that people died at 75, 80, right?
Yeah.
So they had this idea that building a portfolio is designed to last, you know, you'd have it for 15 years and that would be done. And that would be it. Now that's completely changed. People are they're living so much longer. So you have to, everything's having to adjust. And that's again, something I think that a lot of in the wealth management and financial planning and IFA community have got to adjust to. And that's big. And then you add long-term care. The cost of care is astonishing. And the amount of people that are going to be going into care and have not planned for that. So where's that money going to come from? So there's a lot of shifting plates at the moment, with a younger audience coming through, a current generation, an older generation that are going to live a lot longer. So it's a really interesting sector that's sort of flanked by quite two very different demographics.
Yeah, with so many movements on so many flanks, how are you guys managing to keep up with it all?
You know, it's, I have to say, a lot of these things are being spotted, and they are being analyzed and looked at. Things, for example, I think long-term care was something that there was more of a trend in that. There was more of an upward curve. People could spot it. I think people didn't really want to deal with it.
Yes.
But I think now they're starting to realize that people are living a lot. The data is there for everyone to see that, you know, we're going to be living, touch wood, for many years. And a lot of those years we're going to be healthy. So that's fine. We could, you know, possibly work longer, perhaps do a bit work on the side. But also it means that there could be a lot of us who are going to be going into care, and care home costs are astronomical. So the way what I tell my clients is, you don't necessarily always have to have a solution. You don't have to say, this is what you're going to have to do, and that's going to solve the world.
Yeah.
No one's expecting that. But what I want my clients is to be part of the dialogue. So when a journalist or on social media, I want them to be part of that dialogue, so that when people are suddenly, say you are at a certain age, you haven't, perhaps, let's again take wealth management as an example sector, you haven't planned for your future, or you haven't really thought about it. And then you pick up the paper, or you go online, or you read something, or you listen to something on the radio, on a podcast, or on TV, and it's got my client associated in that dialogue with education, information, helping to provide that level of information, then that's great. That's a huge step, and that's where I want my clients to be. So, you know, identifying issues that are going to happen in sectors, which, to be honest, I think we are now, and we've identified quite a few of them. It's making sure I just make sure my clients are lined up with those issues, and that's not just in wealth management. That's across the board. Whether it be regulatory changes, whether it be changes in you know, socioeconomics, geographic changes, whatever it may be. It's just aligning clients with those topics in the right way, with the right titles.
Yeah, I would imagine many of your clients, about, if we throw back the clock, back 10, maybe 20 years, the sort of conversation, you wouldn't even be like considering sort of other mediums. You'll be sticking to more sort of traditional media fare to get that message out. And so you're trying to help them get adapted to, acclimatized to this new world, let's say.
And when I first started, I've been doing what I've been doing for just over 12 years now. When I first started, it
Ooh.
was you had to be in the papers. That was it,
Yeah.
just papers. You had to be, in the National, the Times, Telegraph, Guardian, Independent, FT, City. You had to be there. And online was, okay, we'll get online, but actually we've got to get in print. We have to
Yeah.
get in print because people read print, people read newspapers. And the websites, I look back at what the websites used to look like, and they were terrible. They just looked like, fax paper. It was just terrible. So that, but I also remember social media. I remember, joining a firm, my previous firm, and being told, just make sure you have a LinkedIn account, make sure you have a Twitter account, and let's just keep a track of this and see. This is this new thing called Twitter, and LinkedIn is this new kind of connection point. But don't worry, it's only for recruiters. It's not for us. And Twitter, don't worry about Twitter. Twitter's more of like it's like a Facebook, but 140 characters. So, okay. And then you just saw these beasts and these monsters grow and in strength. And now it's a case of, we've got to be online. We've got to be on social media. We've got to have a great LinkedIn presence. We've got to be keeping our social media. So our traditional, what we're saying on our website, it's got to be tallied with our LinkedIn. It's got to be tallied with our Twitter. It's got to be timed at the right time of the day. So you're absolutely right. And we haven't even stopped. I mean, we've got podcasts, we've got social media, we've got TV, radio. There'll be more things coming. I know they tried, for example, there was things like Clubhouse that tried, perhaps not doing quite as well as people thought. But there's so many other things that are going to emerge that we haven't even thought about now that will become new mediums. TikTok, for example. I mean, things like TikTok and Facebook perhaps and Instagram are less for my sector because it's more, by all means, there are a lot of financial services firms when it comes to retail who are in that, but I'm more on the B2B side, I would say, in general. But I've had a lot of conversation. A lot of my clients are saying, should we look at TikTok? Should we look at Facebook? And my advice is no, not at the moment. It's not ready yet. It will go on deaf ears at the moment. I think stick to what we know best, but keep a very close eye. But if you are if you're a platform, if you're say you launched a new investment platform tomorrow, that allowed trading and allowed investing, my advice would be look at everything with a complete blank canvas. And you know what, TikTok, if, as you rightly said, if you can make it so that it's done in a way that's fun, it's cool, but it has that element of risk, that risk warning that says, this is what we do, and this is how you invest, and this is why investing can be really fun, because you're investing in the brands that you use, you're investing in companies that you might like, you're investing in a company that your mate might work for. It's an element of feeling like you're part of something, but money is money, and it can your capital is always at risk. It can go up and can go down. So I would say, at the moment I'm very sort of just a slightly arm's length for the likes of TikTok, but and Facebook, and Instagram, but all the others, my clients are all over at the moment, all over.
Yeah, look, you might be in PR, but would you say now you are becoming more of, how can I say, a media startup consultant for these firms now?
As in trying to provide them
basically teaching them and showing the ways to basically take on the sort of their own media side, rather than sort of rely on newspapers, rely on other platforms, but getting the word out to them directly.
Yeah, great question. We have a lot of clients who said, should we set up our own podcast? Should we set up our own YouTube videos? Should we do it like that? And that's a tricky one, because that, again, it's reliant on almost us assessing and doing a bit of due diligence on the firm, and whether there is a platform for that, whether that firm has that size, that gravitas to do that, without relying on a really great podcast, or a really great social media platform, or a really good website, etc. So it does depend on the firm. We do get a lot of questions like that, saying, how should we do it ourselves? Are we big enough, or should we maybe put some really great spokespeople on some really good relevant podcasts, or some really good relevant should they have their own Twitter account? And on that, for example, if I take Twitter and LinkedIn, for example, because they're by far the most used in financial services for what I do, I would say. my advice always is, yes, obviously you need to have your own LinkedIn and Twitter profile, and you need to, and it's important, I think, for your spokespeople to be seen as people. I think there's nothing worse. I don't particularly like when I'm doing a search on a company and I'm not seeing many Twitter accounts, LinkedIn accounts, but I am seeing quite a very fluid and very busy company account, because I'm thinking, okay, well, that's great, but I would like to see some characters. I think people do want characters. I think people nowadays, they do want to see some characters and some good spokespeople, because it shows that the company's human, and it's not just being, there's not just buttons behind it. There actually are brains, humans, people making decisions collaboratively, and people from all different backgrounds and diversities. And there are people that you can emulate. And so my advice is, if people are generally, I mean, some people are, I'd say some clients, spokespeople are terrified, and they say, look, I don't want to do this. I wouldn't even know where to start. Yeah. But we try and educate them and try and help them and try and train them. Say, look, actually, it's really important to do this. And it's also, let's not forget, if you are, say you are in an industry where you are on LinkedIn, for example, and you are really good on LinkedIn, you like to post, you like to repost, reshare, you're just very, very active on it. The amount of the ability or the volume of potential new business out there through LinkedIn, for example, is huge, and they're starting to see that. So it's not just okay, I've got to do this because we've got to keep our media profile. No, it's actually new business. It's a great new business tool. So we certainly show that to them and explain that, and they suddenly see it, and they get to like it, and they get to really like it. And I think so my advice is always, if you can, absolutely, it's important to have characters behind the brand. It's important to have spokespeople who have a LinkedIn and Twitter account, for sure.
Yeah, like you say spokesperson, I say community leaders, because like the whole thing is, because like right now, the power to post something on LinkedIn, as you say, that is great. Like people like, okay, I've liked that and everything like this. But I think the real people who really make a difference on these platforms these days are the people which actually build a real big community. And if you've got the power of doing that, there is, God, good Lord. There's a couple of American YouTubers on the financial side of things, Grant Stephan, Meet Kevin, which are like, look, they've been around for about, I'm going to say 4 years max, but yet they've built a tremendous community around the financial sector. People like listen to them, trust them, and whatever they say, because they are community leaders, is held quite highly, sometimes a little bit too highly, because people are fanatical out there, very fanatical. I think any organization which can sort of build a community around their brand, and maybe around a couple of key people what represent that brand, they are going to be in so much of a stronger position going forward. I don't know if you've been trying to explain that to companies, or they just be like, hey.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I've had some very serious financial services brands who have asked about influencers and should they be proactively reaching out to certain influencers in their sector. And it's one that I have to say, I know there are some very, very good influencer marketing brands, companies out there that all they do is that, and that, working out which influencers are right to which company. So it's the old school. It's basically the newer version of celebrity endorsement, right? That's pretty much what it was. I remember doing celebrity endorsements when I first started and tallying with a really good celebrity, usually a sports person, and that would be it. But now it's understanding, should I be collaborating with someone who's an influencer, as you pointed out? And that's a really difficult one, because it's such a platform. It's if you can get it right and link with a really great influencer who is generally passionate about the brand, or you're endorsing very well, frankly, the power of that is just tremendous, and far bigger than any advertising campaign, far bigger than any social media or any TV campaign, because what you're then doing is that you're, as you rightly said, you're speaking to a community of people that are buying into whatever that leader of that community is saying. And that so you're already creating loyal sort of brand ambassadors, and they may not necessarily be immediate clients, but they might tell a couple of mates, they might tell a couple more mates, and lo and behold, you've just created this great buzz. And that's how it works. And I think, and the speed of it is just phenomenal. And to counter that, though, is that, while that's great to promote brands, it also means that something goes wrong. Speed at which something, George Soros, very famous, 50 years to build a brand, 5 minutes to destroy it.
Yeah.
That couldn't, that's probably now 50 years to build a brand and 5 seconds to destroy a brand, right? It doesn't take much. A bad tweet, a bad post, I think these brands are, that's probably a little bit why maybe there is a slight reluctance to engage with those too much, because you're worried, if I get this wrong, this is disastrous. If we don't get this right, we are not, so I think it's much more of a balancing act now than it ever has been, because because of the speed at which things can change very, very quickly.
Yeah, like this is the thing. I would say if this was about a year and a half ago, like the whole sort of, I would say, counsel culture was definitely in the full swing of things. If you did do something wrong, you would basically, that they would work until they have annihilated you from this earth. I think now, now it seems like, people get angry for like a period of time, and then that, like 1-2 news cycles later, not even news cycle, like 1 or 2 different things which come up through the day, and they move on quite swiftly. So I would say, like, look, I'm speaking as a layman here, so I'm not, by all means, I am no expert. You know better than I, but I think the damage wouldn't be as severe. I know it would not make a client happy if that happened, but I think it's not something which is irrecoverable.
No, and I think there's a big difference here between B2C and B2B, B2C and B2B as well. I think B2Bs don't have that audience which would be, necessarily typing away on the phone. They wouldn't perhaps be that connection with the B2B interaction from a person, a client. When it comes to B2C, if something that you're not happy with, something that you've received poor service, whatever it may be, your ability now to go onto 3 platforms at a click of one button with a bad post about it, and how many people can see that, particularly if you've got power behind you and if you're an influencer, is pretty scary. And I think that's a big. I think if you're a client facing brand these days. And I don't deal with many pure client-facing brands. That's tough. And I feel for PRs who do work in those because that's a 24/7 job. There's no stopping that, because that, again, the power of social media and the speed of it. So I think with that, you've got to be ever so careful, and you've got to manage it incredibly well, and you've got to put the people in place for that. So I think. From a client experience, or from a client service perspective, if you're in the client service business, I think, or you're, whether it be in-house or whether it be agency side, you're going to be going, you're only going to grow in importance going forward, because people are going to need it. More ability to complain, more services required to deal with that. It's a simple economics, and that's only going to grow.
Yeah, you know what? I'm loving the energy coming off of you, my friend. I'm loving it. Like, this is the thing, like, because like this, like, okay, someone in your position could be like, yeah, you know what, blimey, if I could snap it all back to the good old days where it was like print and the pillars were there. Like you could see the clear lines, and it a simpler age.
Well, pre-email. I can't quite imagine those days pre-email where it was print. The only thing I would say to that, which would have been quite difficult, is that once it's out, it's out. At least nowadays we have the ability to correct, factual errors, and we can spot things and move quite quickly. But I think it was a lot easier in the olden days. I think you're absolutely right. It also depends. It's like anything, you grow something, quickly, like financial services has grown. It allows for a lot of opportunities to grow, and there are lots of potential to make something big and make something really profitable and make something that's really good for the environment or really good for the world very quickly. At the same time, your threats are even bigger. Your ability to, or the possibility of you just completely collapsing can happen so much faster. And so it can be precarious. So it's certainly a more interesting environment, that's for sure, than it ever has been.
Yeah, but you still seem very excited to turn that page to see what comes tomorrow. I can see, yeah.
I do. I think in what I do in PR, I think you have to have a salesman in you. And if anyone wanting to get into the industry, I think there's got to be a bit of salesman in you, a bit of a salesman in you, because you've got to get a real buzz when you get a piece of coverage for your client. Yeah. If you don't get that, then you're in the road. You're just not. That's not going to work, because that's our currency, right? So getting a great piece of coverage in the FT for my clients, I get a massive buzz from that. And I know that's my currency. That's my kind of my drug that keeps me going is great coverage constantly and really great flow of coverage. So you've got to want to sell the story to get that. So you've got to have that salesman in you as well. And I'm lucky. I do really enjoy what I do. I think a lot of people, don't enjoy what they do, and I'm very fortunate. I do love what I do, and I'm passionate about it.
Yeah, I have to ask, okay, you started in 2009, is that right?
2009. Yeah, 2009.
Okay.
So literally I was doing, I'll never forget, I was trying to find a job, and I wanted to go into financial services marketing, didn't know what PR was.
Yeah.
Doing milk rounds, going around to a load of different firms, did all sorts of weird, and did the Aldi graduate scheme at one point to try and do that, which was hilarious.
Okay.
And I got to the point where I was seeing the same faces and of the same people looking for the same jobs, because it was just as the crisis as pretty much, it was right in the middle of the crisis. So jobs were really difficult, and just happened to get my foot in the door of a big firm called Syndicate Georgian, which was great to me, and was there for 9 years. But it was a real tough time to find jobs. And I know that it's interesting, because obviously a lot of people are now talking about, well, are the next generation going to experience what that was like in 2008, 2009 now? My feeling is not. I'm probably only speaking financial service here, but I'm feeling that there are a lot of jobs out there, a lot of people moving, which opens up opportunities. A lot of people just reevaluating life, which means more interesting startups, more interesting companies being developed, more openings in their companies that they're leaving. So I think it has a potential to have quite a nice bit of a ignite a bit of movement, ignite a bit of energy in the sector. But I know obviously a lot of sectors are in a lot of trouble. But hopefully with the announcements coming up that things like hospitality will open up and travel, etc. But I think it's an interesting time. I think if I was a graduate, obviously it's very sad that a lot of them couldn't go to university and experience that life. But I'd be really excited because there's not really a ceiling now. There's not. In the past, I remember thinking, God, I have to join a company. I couldn't possibly do something myself, or I had to join the biggest company I could. I think now I'd probably be like, well, if I have an idea or if I have something, I would almost say, go for it. I've got 2 daughters, and I would tell them, look, go for what if this is something you're passionate about, because passion goes so much further than I think people will ever give it credit for sometimes. Just being passionate about what you do can take you an awful long way. And I think that's certainly one thing I would say is, don't necessarily think of what used to be the case, maybe for your parents, doesn't necessarily mean the same thing for you. And I think, try and do something that makes sense, sense to you.
No, I agree. I think there is a lot more opportunity out there. I think with regards to what's happened now and the recession we went into, I would it's a different recession. It's not a recession which came through a slow sort of process of mistakes here, there, and everywhere. It was artificially imposed on the globe.
Exactly.
So basically before then we were riding on crazy highs of never been seen before. And that sort of that capital is still there. Some companies have gone, but it's just raring to just kick off again. And I think
exactly
this time next year we'll be flying.
I actually totally agree with you. I think you're spot on. I think we are waiting. You can feel that there's this buzz about things every time an announcement's made and every time we get nearer, because you know that it's you're going to unlock all this capital.
Yeah.
And people are going to spend, they're going to enjoy life. They're going to go on holiday. They're going to go out for, people are going to spend, companies are going to buy other companies. Some sectors will consolidate, some will grow, new sectors are going to merge. I think it's really exciting if we can get back to some form of normality, which I think we can, but you just never know. Unfortunately, we haven't been this experience in any of our lifetimes. So it's very slightly unsure, but signs are looking good. I agree with you.
Yeah, like this is the thing I would say with the UK, United States, Canada, I'm not going to say so much Canada, but a couple of other countries which are kind of like, okay, taking much more of a proactive step with regards to 19th coming up, 9th in Scotland, more than likely. And Wales most probably lie somewhere in the middle of that 20 days. But yeah, I think the United Kingdom, by the time it hits September, October, will be pretty much running like it was before. The rest of Europe, I honestly don't know.
I know.
I don't know. Yeah. Let's forget
that is a really interesting one, because if the rest of Europe is not catching up to us, or not in the same sort of space that we are going forward, what does that mean for the UK? Does that mean that actually the UK moves beyond the rest of Europe? Does that mean that we get held back because we're not able to trade properly and to work? But I don't think it does. I think actually it will. I think from our perspective, it will continue to be very, very strong. And I think we have a system in place now. People know how to work. How to work regardless almost what a situation is like. I mean, this has been so good for our resilience as a nation the last 15 months. That I think, and for companies obviously as well. And I think whatever gets thrown at us, I think we can deal with it. I really do. And I think it's been a real reset, hasn't it? I mean, it's a real proper reset for everyone. I think we all kind of needed it in some aspects, and I think it's only going to make us stronger going forward. I really do.
Yeah, no, I think it was a big refocusing point for a lot of people, where they're going to go in the future, who they are, and who will be joining us in that sort of journey along the way, with regards to certain countries around the world where they're thinking, oh yeah, let's get this down to complete zero. I'll be like, I think that time has passed, and you might be asking yourself. And I think any of these sort of countries which are going to be stuck in that sort of mindset, they will get left behind, because look, don't get me wrong, with all what happened through last year, we got quite lucky, and it wasn't as severe as a certain Spanish flu, which came through and wrecked the world, more than World War I. It wrecked the world. Now it's a case of, what can we do to improve things for the future, like environmental, community, or just basically as for the country as a whole. And I think with regards to the United Kingdom, I voted to stay in Europe, but the more I see how Europe's behaved over the time, I'm being more going, you know what, I think I was on the wrong side. And
interesting.
Yeah, it's just the way I see it.
I think you notice how the narrative around Brexit has fallen behind so much, because obviously the focus, quite rightly, has been on COVID. But I think it's made a lot of people rethink everything in terms of what that means. Because whatever people voted for at that time has now completely changed again. So it's almost a different, you know what I mean? And I think you're absolutely right. I think there'll be a lot of people in that camp who will think, oh, actually, what I voted for then is not what I'm thinking now, the way that they've behaved, etc. There's we'll hear a lot of that. So I think it's a really interesting, it's going to be very interesting going forward, and how that all plays out, and what does Europe look like after this, and What does the UK look like? What does the UK US relations look? What does the UK and the rest of the world look like when it comes to trade? You know, does that for me is going to be really interesting. Does that mean that we suddenly open up many more doors, or do we find ourselves actually at the back of the queue for the bigger trades? And actually, that's not a good thing. It's a really hard one to call, but it's certainly going to be one that's going to be really interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be paying attention what's going to happen between, like, we did a trade deal with Australia recently.
Yes.
Yeah. And like, this is the thing. I'm like, look, that trade deal, okay, if you do it once with that type of trade deal, fine, once. But if you're doing that, okay, Canada or like New Zealand, and then
it's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, it's a lot of paperwork, but then like as soon as you do the deal, you are going to have to apply the tariffs literally straight away, because they ain't going to work.
It's going to be a lot. Again, it goes to that point, but a lot more jobs.
Yeah, well, yeah,
a lot more people needed to help manage that. That's going to be a very a lot of tentacles in different areas of the world that we're going to need to manage, and that's going to be that's going to need a lot of manpower. That's for sure.
Indeed. My. Now, so with regards to how you see yourself and your firm going forward in the next sort of, I'd say, 3 to 5 years, what would you like? What do you see your expectations, or what would you like your expectations to be?
I think we found what we want to do in terms of I think in the past, perhaps we looked at a subsector in financial services. We looked at capital markets, we looked at financial markets as being kind of or market structure as being our kind of go-to, and we are very, very good at that.
Yeah.
But we years have entered different sectors in financial services. And for me and for the rest of the firm, I think we want to grow that and be excellent across all the different financial services sectors. Keeping that B2B element, obviously we wouldn't go into B2C, just because I think once we do that, then we very much are perhaps losing our focus a little bit. So we are hiring people that have those skills. We're hiring people from different backgrounds, different diversities, so that we can actually go at different sectors, different subsectors as well in financial services. So that's what I really want to do, is I want us to grow organically, but at the same time bringing on really great people, growing the firm not too quickly as well. I don't believe in we like to grow with the firm, so that we like to grow with people, really good quality people, not overloading the firm, because we want to make sure that we keep the DNA of what Greentarget is, and making sure that we don't want to lose that ability and that kind of camaraderie that we have within the firm as well. We've got a really great environment. People absolutely love each other. They get on so well. We're a really great unit. And I think that's really important that we don't do that. So that's what I would say, is it's growing at a nice, steady pace, growing into different markets, finding new segments, perhaps looking at firms that we could maybe, work with, acquire, partner up with, to grow at the right, always finding the right partners, I think is really important. We are owned by a company called Selby Anderson, which essentially is a firm that owns a number of specialist marketing agencies. So we always have the ability to cross-sell as well with clients. So, and that's something that they're very keen for us to do more of. And that, again, is something that we would look to do. And the more we have the ability to have referrals to other types of marketing agencies, the more chances are we able to penetrate into different markets. Because if we can go at a different segment within financial services and say, yeah, we can do that. And we can also bring our advertising agency that we work with, or our social media agency, or our other PR agency that actually focus on this sector.
Yeah.
So that in itself is for us is a really powerful tool. And so that's something I think we can definitely use. And yeah, I think if we continue the way we're going, it's a really nice trajectory at the moment. And we just hope that continues to go. Yeah, we continue to grow like that.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to see you guys like broadcasting on LinkedIn at some point. That's like, yeah, so with your own little like either.
Well, We've got some great writers, and I think we do love. We realize how important that is to produce great content, and to be on podcasts and to share what we know, because it's also really important for me to bring through the next generation of people that want to get into PR. I think I'm really passionate about that, and if that can be with us, great. If it's with other firms, great as well. It's just a case of bringing people through and kind of having a little bit of understanding of what it's like, and how it's a great sector to be in. If you like writing, if you like selling, if you like people, and you like communications, and you get a buzz from the news, then it's a great sector to be in for sure.
What is your favorite thing in PR?
My favorite thing in PR, I love changing the perception of a firm. So if I've worked with a few firms who've had some pretty negative coverage for a variety of reasons. Can be performance, can be too many changes in the firm, can be a sensational headline. It can be anything. And for me to come on board and to change that perception by getting great coverage that counteracts those negative pieces, that changes the way that the firm is perceived by strategic ways of communicating to the media, and to highlight the really great bits of the firm. I love that. I love when a brand changes course through my advice. And also I said to you earlier, I love selling a story, and I love seeing, selling a story that I then see getting coverage. It's for me, it's the full scale. You've identified something that your client could be aligned to. You've sold it to a newspaper or an outlet. It's appeared with your client all over it, and even the ultimate goal, the holy grail of PR is a piece of coverage that you get, and it leads to new business. If you can get new business, it's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Love it. Oh, what can I say? Now, okay. Now for Now for the final question. This is going to be a question most probably psychologically profile you to the man out there. Now,
oh gosh.
Now, okay. You are aware of the show, The Muppet Show, right? The Muppet.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, okay. Think of a film, a feature film, any feature film. It could be your favorite feature film or one you respect. Now, replace the whole entire cast of that feature film with the Muppets, and you can only have one human actor in it. Which film would that be, and why?
Oh gosh, wow, that's a really difficult one. So which? Oh God. So it has to be I honestly, that's a really difficult one. So I'm replacing all the actors with the Muppets.
Except
of a film, except one actor. Well, one of my favorite. I'll tell you what my favorite film of all time is Gladiator.
Yes.
But then having Russell Crowe with a load of Muppets would probably look a bit silly, really. Maybe not. Maybe it would work. It'd be fighting him in the gladiatorial rings. Yeah, that's a tough one. I would probably keep to my word of saying Gladiator being my favorite film and replacing it with Muppets. Why not? Bit of fun.
So, okay, right. So, who would be Russell Crowe's best mate then?
Oh God. Oh my God. I actually can't even remember. I can't even remember the names of the Muppets. I can't even remember the names of them.
You have Fozzie Bear. You have Ralph. You have like
Frog.
Kermit,
of course. Kermit the Frog. Actually, of course, it's got to be Kermit the Frog. Of course, it has. You can imagine him running around, bobbling his head. Yeah, that's got to be it. I can picture that now.
So Russell Crowe's love interest, it's going to be Miss Piggy, are you saying?
Oh, of course it has to be. Yeah, of course it has to be. And she would love it. She would absolutely love it.
Oh yeah, Miss Piggy, no escape. No, yes, very interesting. If your colleagues watch this, so I go, watch him carefully.
Yeah, exactly. What is he talking about?
Absolutely, brilliant. Can you tell the lovely people out there how they can find you, Jamie?
Sure, yeah. I am on LinkedIn, Jamie Brownlee. I've got Twitter. I'm on Twitter with the sort of the address of @brow, so BROWJD, and you can find me on our website, which is www.greentarget.co.uk. Always happy to help anyone who wants to get in touch and have a chat. Always keen to hear from people, so more than happy to.
Brilliant. Thank you for coming on to the podcast today, Jamie. You have been a star, a superstar.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
Awesome. I'd like to also say thank you to you, my friends, my life warriors, for staying, watching the show so far. You have been great. You have been fantastic. So please stay well, stay safe, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic, be all the positive bees you can be in this world, and then some. Have a great day. Peace. And we are